Private Danny Reed felt the transport ship shudder as it docked with the orbital training facility. He looked down at Riley, his Belgian Malinois, who sat perfectly still beside him. The dog's ears perked up at every new sound, but he remained calm. Danny had trained with Riley for 2 years before joining the Galactic Defense Coalition, and they knew each other better than most people knew their own families. The airlock hissed open. Danny picked up his duffel bag and held Riley's leash loosely in his other hand. They walked into the reception area together. Everything stopped. A tall, gray-skinned Hovan administrator dropped his data pad. 3 recruits from a species Danny didn't recognize scrambled backward, knocking over a bench. A maintenance worker with 4 arms froze in place, all 4 limbs raised defensively. "Predator!" someone shouted. Riley's tail wagged slowly. He looked up at Danny, waiting for direction. "Sit," Danny said quietly. Riley sat. The room remained silent for several long seconds. Then a massive Drath in a drill sergeant's uniform pushed through the crowd. Lieutenant Nash stood nearly 7 feet tall, with thick scales and eyes that could probably see through walls. He stared at Riley with something between curiosity and disgust. "This is your war beast?" Nash asked. "This is Riley, sir. He's my partner." "Partner." Nash walked in a slow circle around them. Riley's eyes followed the movement, but he didn't shift position. "Our intelligence report said humans brought aggressive combat animals. Apex predators from death worlds. This creature appears docile. He's trained, sir." "Not docile." A smaller figure approached from the administrative desk. Sergeant Bryn was a Hovan, which meant he thought in pure logic and rarely showed emotion. His large black eyes studied Riley with scientific interest. "Private Reed," Bryn said, consulting his datapad. "Coalition regulations require all combat animals to be secured in containment when not actively deployed. Your beast must be transferred to the kennels immediately. With respect, Sergeant, Riley isn't a combat animal. He's a working dog. He stays with me." "Unacceptable." This came from a nervous voice in the crowd. A recruit named Owen, from the herbivore Palin species, stood near the back wall. His entire body trembled. "That thing is a killer. Look at its teeth. Look at its claws. My people were hunted by creatures like that for thousands of years." Danny knelt beside Riley and scratched behind his ears. Riley leaned into the touch, tongue hanging out in what humans called a smile. To the aliens, it probably looked like a display of fangs. "He won't hurt anyone," Danny said. "I promise." "Your promises mean nothing." Owen's voice cracked. "What if it breaks free? What if it decides to attack?" Lieutenant Nash raised one scaled hand for silence. "The human makes a valid point about regulations. However, Command approved this experimental integration. Private Reed and his creature will remain together during the evaluation period." He fixed Danny with a hard stare. "But understand this, human. If that beast shows one hint of aggression toward any coalition member, it will be destroyed." "Am I clear?" "Crystal clear, sir." "Then get to your assigned quarters. Barracks C, Section 4. Your beast sleeps on the floor, not on furniture. Training begins at dawn cycle." Danny nodded and headed toward the barracks. Riley walked beside him, perfectly healed without any tension on the leash. Behind them, Danny heard the whispers starting up again. Fear. Confusion. Anger. He'd expected this. Humans were new to the coalition, and apparently nobody had told the other species about dogs. The barracks were standard military issue. Rows of bunks, lockers, and shared facilities. Danny chose a bed near the window overlooking the planet below. He unpacked his gear while Riley explored the room, sniffing everything with intense interest. 3 other recruits were already there. They all moved to the far side of the room. "He really won't attack?" one of them asked. "She was Hovan like Sergeant Bryn. Not unless I tell him to. And I won't." "Why does it keep showing its teeth?" "That's called panting. He's just breathing, and wagging his tail means he's happy." The Hovan recruit tilted her head. "Happy? Your war beast experiences happiness?" "He's not a war beast. He's a dog. And yes, he feels emotions. Happiness, sadness, excitement, fear. Just like you." This seemed to confuse her even more. She exchanged glances with the other recruits, then slowly approached. Riley watched her come closer, tail wagging faster now. "Can I—" She hesitated. "Can I touch it?" Danny smiled. "Sure, hold out your hand first. Let him sniff you." She extended one slender hand. Riley sniffed carefully, then licked her fingers. She jumped back in alarm. It's okay, Danny said. That's how he says hello. He likes you. The Hoven recruit looked at her hand in wonder. It's affectionate? Very. She reached out again, this time touching the top of Riley's head. The dog leaned into her hand just like he had with Danny. A strange expression crossed her face, something between surprise and joy. It's so soft, she whispered. Within minutes, all 3 recruits were gathered around Riley, petting him carefully while asking Danny 100 questions. Where did dogs come from? How long had humans worked with them? Were they dangerous? How did the training work? Danny answered each question patiently. This was why he'd volunteered. Humans had something special, something the rest of the galaxy didn't understand yet. For thousands of years, his species had lived alongside other animals. They'd turned wolves into dogs, wild horses into partners, fierce cats into companions. While other species dominated or destroyed, humans had learned to cooperate. The door slammed open. Lieutenant Nash stood in the entrance, blocking out the light from the corridor. Emergency drill. All recruits to the assembly point immediately. This is not a test. The room exploded into motion. Recruits grabbed gear and rushed toward the door. Danny clipped Riley's leash onto his vest and followed. What about the beast? Nash demanded. He comes with me, sir. That's the whole point. Nash's expression was unreadable. Then keep up, human. Let's see what your tail-wagging war beast can really do. They ran toward the training complex together, Riley moving smoothly beside Danny's left leg. Behind them, Danny heard Owen's frightened voice asking what kind of test would require the Predator to be included. Danny didn't know what was coming, but he and Riley were ready for it. They'd trained for this their whole partnership. Now they just had to prove to an entire galaxy that trust and cooperation could be just as powerful as teeth and claws, maybe even more powerful. Riley's nose twitched as they entered the training complex. Danny recognized that look. His dog had caught a scent. The massive facility stretched out before them like a small city. Buildings, obstacles, fake streets, and simulated terrain filled the space. Somewhere in this maze was their target, a training dummy representing a wounded soldier. Every recruit team had to find it and extract it safely. Most teams would take hours using their standard-issue scanners and search patterns. Danny had a better tool. Sergeant Bryn stood on a raised platform addressing the assembled recruits. This exercise tests your ability to locate and rescue injured personnel in hostile territory. Your scanners will face electronic countermeasures. Your communication will be disrupted. You must rely on training and teamwork. His large eyes fixed on Danny. All methods are acceptable, including use of combat animals. However, loss of control over such animals will result in immediate failure. Lieutenant Nash added, "You have 4 hours. Begin." Teams scattered in different directions. Owen's group headed left with their scanning equipment held high. The Hoven recruits moved methodically toward the right sector. Others split up to cover more ground. Danny unclipped Riley's leash. Several recruits stopped and stared. Owen actually screamed, "Private Reed!" Bryn's voice crackled over the comm system. "Secure your animal." Riley fined. Danny used the hand signal they'd practiced 1,000 times. Riley's entire body changed. His casual, friendly manner disappeared, replaced by intense focus. His nose went to the ground, sweeping back and forth. He circled once, twice, then locked onto something and started moving. Danny jogged after him. Riley moved fast, but not wild. He checked back every few seconds to make sure Danny was following. When he hit an obstacle, he went around or jumped over it. When the path split, he didn't hesitate. His nose knew the way. From the observation platform, Bryn watched through cameras. The creature is tracking something. But there's no scent trail in the simulation. We didn't account for biological sensors. Nash grunted. Watch. Riley led Danny through a section filled with fake chemical spills designed to overwhelm technological sensors. The machines on other teams started giving false readings, beeping wildly and pointing in wrong directions. Riley ignored all of it. Whatever he was tracking, it was real. They passed 3 other teams in 15 minutes. The recruits stared in confusion as Danny and Riley moved with clear purpose while everyone else wandered in circles. How is the human navigating? One team leader asked over the shared frequency. He's not navigating, another replied. He's following the beast. Riley suddenly stopped at a pile of rubble. He sat and looked back at Danny, then barked once. Good boy. Show me. Riley moved to a specific spot and pawed at it. Danny pulled away debris and found a hatch leading underground. He opened it and climbed down. Riley following close behind. The underground section was pitch black. Danny pulled out a light, but Riley was already moving again. Down here, away from the false signals and electronic interference, his nose worked even better. They found the dummy in a collapsed tunnel section. It would have taken human searchers hours to check every underground passage. Riley had led them straight to it. Danny activated his comm. Target located. Section 7 Beta, underground. Requesting extraction team. Silence on the other end. Then Bryn's voice filled with what might have been surprise. Confirmed. Time elapsed, 23 minutes. New facility record. But the exercise wasn't over. Red lights started flashing. A recorded voice announced simulated hostile forces entering the area. Riley's ears swiveled toward a side passage. He growled low in warning. Danny trusted that growl. Down. They both dropped flat as simulated weapons fire streaked through the space where they'd been standing. Training robots rounded the corner, their sensors painting Danny and Riley as targets. This was the part that worried everyone. Would Riley panic? Would he attack? Would he become the uncontrollable predator everyone feared? Riley stayed pressed against Danny's side, alert but not aggressive. Danny moved and Riley moved with him. They worked their way behind cover while the robots advanced. Danny used a training weapon to tag 2 robots as eliminated. Riley watched the angles Danny couldn't see, giving a soft whine when movement appeared on their left. Danny spun and tagged another robot. They made it back to the extraction point with the dummy. The whole exercise took 37 minutes. Above ground, Owen's team was still searching the eastern sector. Back in the debriefing room, Sergeant Bryn pulled up video footage. Every recruit team gathered to watch. They saw Riley tracking through impossible conditions. They saw him alert Danny to dangers before any technology registered them. They saw the partnership in action. The human's beast used biological sensors to bypass our countermeasures, Bryn explained. Its olfactory capability is roughly 10,000 times more sensitive than most species present. It can detect chemical signatures we cannot. But it was unleashed, Owen protested. It could have run wild. It could have attacked. Lieutenant Nash stepped forward. For the first time, Danny saw something like respect in the big Drath's eyes. Watch this section. The video showed the moment when Riley growled in warning. The robots appeared 2 seconds later. The creature alerted Private Reed to danger before our simulation registered the threat. It provided tactical awareness. Nash paused. And notice how it never left the human side. Even without a physical restraint, it remained controlled. One of the Hoven recruits raised her hand. How is this possible? How does the human maintain control without pain compliance or dominance displays? Danny stood up. I don't control Riley, we're partners. I trust him and he trusts me. We trained together for 2 years before coming here. He works with me because he wants to, not because he's forced to. Your beast wants to work? Owen sounded skeptical. Dogs are pack animals. In the wild, their ancestors hunted together, protected each other, raised young together. Riley sees me as his pack. Helping me, working with me, that's natural to him. I don't have to force it. Bryn's head tilted in thought. Fascinating. Your species domesticated these creatures? Thousands of years ago. We turned wolves into dogs. We gave them food and shelter. They gave us loyalty and companionship. Both species benefited. The room fell silent as the aliens processed this information. Their worlds had predators too, but those predators were always enemies. The idea that you could befriend one, work alongside one, seemed impossible. Nash dismissed the other recruits but gestured for Danny to remain. When they were alone, the lieutenant spoke quietly. Command is watching this program closely. They want to know if what you have with that beast can be replicated. If it can be taught, it can, Danny said. But it takes time. You can't rush the bond. Time is something we may not have. Nash pulled up a star map. Red markers indicated hostile activity. There's a situation developing. Raiders hit a mining colony 3 sectors from here. Heavy casualties. They're requesting immediate assistance. Danny felt his stomach tighten. We're still in basic training. War doesn't wait for training to finish, Private. All available personnel are being mobilized. That includes you. Nash looked at Riley, who sat calmly beside Danny's leg. And your war beast. He's not a war beast, sir. Then what is he? Danny smiled and scratched Riley's ears. He's my best friend. And together we're going to show the galaxy what humans and dogs can really do. Nash almost smiled back. Almost. Get your gear, Private. We deploy in 2 hours. Let's see if your tail-wagger can handle real combat. Smoke filled the air as the transport ship touched down on the mining colony. Danny could see flames through the viewport. Buildings collapsed into rubble and people running in panic. This wasn't a training exercise. People were dying down there. Riley pressed against his leg, sensing Danny's tension. Dogs always knew when something was wrong. Listen up. Lieutenant Nash stood at the front of the troop bay. 20 soldiers from 6 different species checked their weapons and gear. Raiders hit this colony 4 hours ago. They're after the refined metals in the storage facilities. Civilian casualties are high. Our job is to secure the area and evacuate survivors. Stay with your assigned teams. Watch your sectors. And if you see the enemy, you are cleared to engage. The rear door opened. Heat and smoke rushed in. Move out. Danny followed his assigned squad leader, a veteran Drath named Cole. Riley stayed at his left side, moving smoothly despite the chaos around them. The other soldiers in the squad kept glancing at the dog, clearly uncertain about having a predator among them. Reed, your beast better not slow us down, Cole growled. He won't, sir. They moved through the colony's main street. Everywhere Danny looked, he saw destruction. Shops were burned out. Vehicles lay overturned. A child's toy sat abandoned in the middle of the road, covered in dust. Riley's nose was working constantly, processing hundreds of scents. Suddenly, he stopped and stared at a collapsed building. Keep moving, Cole ordered. Riley whined and looked back at Danny. Sir, wait. Danny trusted that whine. Riley's alerting. There's something in that building. Scanners show nothing. Scanners can't smell. Cole hesitated, then gestured to 2 soldiers. Check it out quickly. Danny and Riley approached the collapsed structure. It had been a residential block, now reduced to broken concrete and twisted metal. Riley moved carefully around the debris, nose down. He stopped at one specific spot and barked. Danny pulled out his comm. I need digging equipment here. There's someone underneath. How can you possibly know that? Cole demanded. Because Riley knows. The equipment arrived. They cleared rubble carefully, aware that one wrong move could cause more collapse. 10 minutes later, they pulled out 3 people. A mother and 2 children, trapped in a small pocket under what used to be their kitchen. They were dehydrated and terrified, but alive. The mother looked at Riley and pulled her children closer. It's okay, Danny said gently. He helped find you. He's a good dog. One of the children, a small boy, reached out toward Riley. Puppy? Riley's tail wagged slowly. He leaned forward and licked the boy's hand. The child laughed. It was a small sound in the midst of all this destruction, but it was something. Cole watched this exchange with an expression Danny couldn't read. Then his comm crackled. All units be advised. Enemy forces spotted in Sector 9. Heavy weapons detected. That's our sector, Cole said. Move. They headed toward Sector 9 at double speed. Riley kept pace easily. His ears were up, rotating constantly to catch every sound. They rounded a corner and nearly walked into an ambush. Riley saw them first. Or smelled them. Or heard them. However he detected the danger, he reacted instantly. He stopped so suddenly that Danny nearly tripped over him. A warning growl rumbled in his throat. Down, Danny shouted. The squad hit the ground as weapons fire tore through the space where they'd been standing. 3 raiders had been waiting in a damaged storefront, ready to catch coalition forces in a kill zone. But Riley had given them warning. Cole returned fire while the squad found cover. The fight was brief but intense. The raiders were equipped with stolen military gear, well-trained and aggressive. But they hadn't expected the coalition soldiers to avoid their ambush. One raider tried to flank around the left side. Riley saw him moving and barked sharply. Cole spun and tagged the raider before he could get into position. When the shooting stopped, 3 raiders were down and the squad was intact. Cole looked at Riley with new respect. Your beast just saved our lives. Riley, Danny corrected. His name is Riley. They continued through the sector, finding more survivors. Some were trapped in buildings. Others were hiding in basements and storage rooms. Riley found them all. His nose cut through smoke, dust, and chemical contamination that confused electronic sensors. Owen appeared with his own squad. When he saw Riley, he didn't run anymore. Instead, he approached carefully. Your dog? Owen said quietly. He really does help people. That's what he's trained for. Search and rescue. On my world, we were taught that all predators only destroy, that they only kill. Owen watched Riley carefully sniff around a damaged water tank. But your predator saves lives. Riley's not just any predator. Dogs evolved alongside humans. We shaped each other. They protected us from dangers. We fed them and kept them safe. Over thousands of years, we became partners. Riley alerted on the water tank. Inside, they found an elderly couple who had been hiding there for hours. As the day wore on, Riley found 17 more survivors. Other teams, using only technology, found 6. The difference was obvious. Command started directing all search and rescue operations through Danny and Riley. By evening, the raiders had been driven off. The colony was secure. Medical teams were treating the wounded. Reconstruction crews were already planning repairs. Danny sat against a wall, exhausted. Riley lay beside him, head on Danny's leg. The dog was tired too, but his tail still wagged weakly when people walked past. Lieutenant Nash found them there. The big Drath sat down heavily, his armor scorched from combat. 23 survivors found by your team today, Private. That's more than any other unit. Riley did most of the work, sir. Yes, he did. Nash reached out slowly and touched the top of Riley's head. The dog looked up at him and thumped his tail against the ground. I've been in combat for 15 years. I've seen every kind of weapon and tactic, but I've never seen anything like this. Like what, sir? Cooperation. True partnership between species. Most of the galaxy uses force and domination, but you humans found something different. You found friendship. Riley yawned, showing all his teeth. Nash flinched slightly, then laughed. Even when he looks dangerous, he's not aggressive. How is that possible? Danny thought about how to explain it. We bred dogs to live with us. We selected for friendliness, for loyalty, for the desire to work together. Riley's ancestors were wolves who chose to stay near human camps. They got food from our leftovers. We got warning when danger approached. Both species benefited. Over generations, that relationship deepened. Symbiosis, Nash said. Mutual benefit instead of domination. Exactly. Nash stood up and looked down at them both. Command wants a full report on this operation. They're talking about expanding the program, bringing in more humans and their dogs. That's good, sir, is it? Nash's expression turned serious. Because if this works, if your way of doing things proves superior, it will change everything. The whole military doctrine will need to be rewritten. Species that rely on intimidation and force will have to learn cooperation instead. Not everyone will like that, Danny understood. Change was always hard, but he looked at Riley. This animal who had once been a wild wolf but now dedicated his life to helping humans, and he knew the change was worth it. Someone has to start, sir. Might as well be us. Nash nodded slowly. Get some rest, Private. Both of you. Tomorrow we head back to base, and then the real work begins. 3 months had changed everything. Danny stood in the center of the new training facility, watching 6 other handlers work with their dogs. A German shepherd named Duke tracked scents through an obstacle course. A border collie called Pip demonstrated herding techniques that could manage civilian evacuations. A massive Newfoundland named Bear practiced water rescue. Each dog had different skills, different personalities, different strengths, and each one was changing how the galaxy thought about cooperation. The key is patience, Danny told a group of alien observers. Sergeant Bryn stood among them, taking notes on everything. You can't force the bond. It has to develop naturally. A Hovan named Tess raised her hand. But my people are logical. We work through clear hierarchies and defined rules. How do we apply that to creatures who operate on emotion? Danny smiled. That's exactly the point. Dogs do feel emotion. That's not a weakness. That's their strength. They're loyal because they love. They work because they want to please. You can't logic your way into that kind of dedication. Riley sat beside Danny, demonstrating perfect calm despite the crowd. Several alien soldiers had already asked to pet him today. He'd tolerated all of them with patient friendliness. One of the new handlers approached. Her name was Amy, and she worked with a Labrador named Scout. She looked frustrated. Scout won't focus during the detection training. He keeps getting distracted by food. Danny laughed. Labs are like that. They're motivated by food more than most breeds. Use that. Make finding the target more rewarding than the distraction. How? Bring better treats. It seemed too simple, but that was often how dog training worked. Understand what motivated the individual animal, then use that motivation to guide behavior. Lieutenant Nash entered the facility with 3 other officers. Danny recognized 2 of them as high-ranking members of Coalition Command. They watched the training with intense interest. Private Reed, Nash called. Demonstration, please, Danny nodded. He and Riley moved to the center of the training floor. What would you like to see, sir? Show them what you showed me. The full partnership. Danny understood. This wasn't about tricks or basic commands. This was about showing what humans and dogs could do together. He started with simple obedience. Riley heeled, sat, stayed, came when called. All without a leash. All with minimal commands, sometimes just a hand signal, sometimes just a look. Then they moved to more complex work. Danny hid training items around the facility while Riley waited with his eyes covered. Then he sent Riley to find them. The dog worked methodically, using his nose to locate each item in turn. He found things buried under equipment, hidden behind walls, tucked into ceiling panels. His olfactory sense is incredible. One of the visiting officers said, she was Hoven like Bryn. But that alone doesn't explain the coordination. Watch this part, Nash said. Danny set up a scenario. Riley had to navigate through a dark, smoke-filled corridor to locate a simulated casualty, then return and lead Danny to the location. Humans couldn't see or smell through the smoke. But Riley could. The dog disappeared into the smoke. Danny waited, trusting. 90 seconds later, Riley emerged and barked once. Then he turned and headed back into the smoke. Danny followed. Riley led him around obstacles through turns directly to the target. They completed the rescue and returned to clean air. The officers looked impressed. How did the creature know to come back for you? The Hoven officer asked. Because that's what partners do, Danny said. Riley knows I can't see in the dark as well as he can. So he guides me. I know he can't operate human equipment, so I handle that part. We cover each other's weaknesses. Bryn stepped forward. I've been documenting this program since its inception. The success rate is remarkable. Teams working with canines show 40% improvement in search and rescue operations, 35% better threat detection, and significantly higher morale. Morale? One officer asked. The dogs provide emotional support, Bryn explained. Soldiers report feeling less stressed when working with them. The animals offer companionship and comfort between missions. Owen entered the facility with his assigned dog, a golden retriever named Buddy. The transformation in Owen had been dramatic. 3 months ago, he'd been terrified of Riley. Now he worked confidently with his own canine partner. Sir, Owen addressed the visiting officers. May I speak? Proceed. My species evolved as prey animals. Our instincts tell us to fear predators. When I first saw Riley, every part of my biology screamed danger. Owen knelt beside Buddy and scratched the dog's ears. But working with Buddy taught me something. Fear and respect are different things. I respect what these animals are. They're hunters, yes. They're powerful, yes, but they've chosen to use that power to help us. That's extraordinary. One of the officers walked closer to inspect Buddy. The dog sat calmly, tail wagging. May I touch it? He's friendly, Owen said. Go ahead. The officer reached out hesitantly. Buddy licked her hand. She jumped back, then laughed. It was a strange sound, like wind through metal pipes, but definitely a laugh. It's affectionate, she said with wonder. A predator showing affection to prey. That's what domestication means, Danny explained. We didn't just tame dogs. We changed them on a fundamental level. We selected for friendliness, for cooperation, for the ability to live peacefully with other species. It took thousands of years, but we created something new, something the galaxy hasn't seen before. The officers conferred quietly among themselves. Then the lead officer addressed Nash. The program is approved for expansion. We want 50 more handler teams trained within 6 months. Can you do it? Nash looked at Danny. Can we? Danny thought about it. 50 teams meant 50 dogs, 50 handlers, all needing months of training. It was a huge undertaking. But if it worked, if they could spread this across the coalition, it could change everything. We can do it, sir. But we'll need resources, facilities, support staff, and most importantly, time. You can't rush the bond between a human and their dog. You'll have what you need, the lead officer said. This program is now a priority. After the officers left, Danny sat with Riley in a quiet corner of the facility. The dog rested his head on Danny's lap, content. Amy approached with Scout. Do you think this will really change things? I mean, really change how the galaxy works? Danny looked around at the other handlers and their dogs. He thought about Owen, who had overcome instinctive fear to find friendship. He thought about all the lives Riley had saved at the mining colony. He thought about the future, where maybe every coalition ship would have a dog aboard. I think we're showing them something they've never understood, Danny said. That strength isn't just about power. It's about connection, trust, love. Dogs taught humans that thousands of years ago. Now we're teaching it to the stars. Scout wandered over and sniffed Riley. The two dogs touched noses in greeting. Then Scout flopped down beside Riley. Amy sat next to Danny. The other species, they use pain and fear to control their war beasts, Amy said. They don't understand what we have. Not yet. But they're learning. Sergeant Bryn appeared with his data pad. Private Reed, I need to show you something. He pulled up a star map. It showed dozens of worlds, and on each one a small icon appeared. A paw print. What is this? Requests, Bryn said. 73 different coalition worlds have formally requested human handler teams. They want dogs on their security forces, their rescue teams, their military units. The demand far exceeds our current capacity. Danny stared at the map. 73 worlds, thousands of soldiers, all wanting to learn what humans and dogs had figured out millennia ago. We're going to need more treats, he said, and Amy laughed. Riley's tail thumped against the floor. And somewhere in the facility, Duke barked happily. The sound echoed through the space, a sound that had accompanied humanity for thousands of years. Now it would echo across the stars. The alert came at night, screaming through every speaker on the station. Danny rolled out of bed, already reaching for his gear. Riley was on his feet instantly, alert and ready. All personnel to combat stations. This is not a drill. Hostile fleet detected. Ground forces deploy in 20 minutes. Danny dressed quickly and ran toward the hangar bay. Other soldiers filled the corridors, all moving with urgent purpose. Riley kept pace beside him, his training overriding any confusion or fear. The briefing was short and brutal. A hostile force had invaded coalition territory near a colony world called Haven's Rest. Population, 2 million. Defenses minimal. The enemy was already landing ground troops. Lieutenant Nash stood before the assembled forces. His expression was grim. Intelligence shows at least 3 battalions hitting the surface. They're targeting civilian centers. Our job is to hold them until reinforcements arrive. That means urban combat, house-to-house fighting, and probably heavy casualties. He paused. All K-9 units will deploy with frontline forces. Your search and rescue capabilities are needed immediately. Danny checked Riley's tactical vest. It carried medical supplies, communication gear, and a camera that would let command see what Riley saw. The dog stood still while Danny worked, understanding this was important. Amy appeared with Scout. Her face was pale but determined. First real combat for us, and you'll be fine. Trust Scout, he'll keep you alive. What if I mess up? What if I give him the wrong command? Danny remembered his own first mission at the mining colony. The fear, the uncertainty. But he'd had Riley beside him, and that had made all the difference. Scout trusts you, Danny said. Don't overthink it. Just work together like you trained. The transport ships launched. Danny watched through the viewport as they descended toward Haven's Rest. Smoke already rose from multiple points in the city below. Explosions flashed like lightning. They hit atmosphere hard, the ship shaking from anti-aircraft fire. Riley pressed against Danny's leg but didn't panic. Good boy. Always a good boy. The landing was rough. The doors opened to chaos, buildings burned. Civilians ran through the streets screaming. Enemy soldiers advanced through the city in organized units, their weapons cutting down anyone who resisted. Move, move, move. Nash's voice cut through the noise. Danny's unit deployed into the city. They were assigned to Sector 12, a residential area where civilians were reportedly trapped by enemy forces. Riley's nose immediately went to work. The air was thick with smoke, chemical residue, and blood. But somewhere in that mix of scents, Riley could detect life. They moved through streets turned into war zones. Abandoned vehicles provided cover. Rubble from destroyed buildings blocked paths. In the distance, weapons fire echoed constantly. Riley stopped at an intersection and growled. Contact front, Danny shouted. Enemy soldiers appeared from cover. The firefight was brief but intense. Coalition training and coordination won out. The enemy fell back, leaving 2 of their number behind. But the combat had cost time, and somewhere in this sector, civilians were dying. Riley pulled toward a collapsed apartment building. Danny followed without question. Inside, they found 30 people hiding in a basement. Families with children, elderly residents, workers who'd been caught by the invasion. Coalition forces, Danny called down. "We're here to evacuate you." But evacuation wasn't simple. The building was unstable. The streets were hot with combat, and enemy forces were actively hunting for civilians. Riley alerted again. "More hostiles approaching. Cole, we need cover." Danny called to his squad leader. The coalition soldiers set up a defensive perimeter while Danny organized the evacuation. Riley worked crowd control, his presence somehow calming even in the chaos. Children who should have been terrified instead reached out to pet him. A little girl asked, "Is he a guard dog?" "He's a good dog," Danny said. "The best." They got the civilians moving. Riley led them through streets he'd only seen for minutes, somehow finding paths that avoided enemy patrols. Dogs had been navigating human cities for thousands of years. This was just another city, another job. Halfway to the extraction point, Riley suddenly stopped and barked sharply. Danny dropped flat. The civilians followed his example. 2 seconds later, artillery fire screamed overhead, impacting exactly where they would have been if they'd kept walking. Riley had heard it coming before anyone else. "Good boy," Danny said, his voice shaking slightly. "Very good boy." They reached the extraction point. Transport ships took the civilians to safety. Danny's unit prepared to push deeper into the combat zone. Owen appeared with Buddy and his squad. The golden retriever looked tired but focused. Owen had blood on his armor, but he was walking and functional. "Found 18 trapped in a school," Owen reported. Buddy tracked them through the rubble. All civilians safe. Across the city, other K9 teams reported similar successes. Amy and Scout had found survivors in a collapsed hospital. A handler named Carlos and his German Shepherd King had detected an ambush and saved an entire platoon, but the enemy was learning. They started targeting the dogs. Danny heard it over the comm. "Handler down in Sector 7. Dog injured, requesting immediate medical." The handler was a woman named Lisa. Her Labrador, Max, had taken fire protecting her from a sniper. Both were alive but needed help. "We're closest," Danny told Cole. "Riley and I can reach them. It's hot over there. Heavy combat. That's why they need us now." Cole nodded. "Go. We'll cover your exit." Danny and Riley ran through burning streets. Riley moved like liquid, flowing around obstacles, never slowing. Dogs could run for hours when they needed to. This was what they were built for. They found Lisa and Max behind a barricade. Max was bleeding from his shoulder but still alert. When he saw Riley, his tail wagged weakly. Dogs always greeted each other, even in war zones. Danny applied emergency medical supplies to Max, while Riley watched the approaches. Enemy soldiers were moving through nearby buildings, searching for targets. Riley's growl warned of danger. Danny looked up to see 3 hostile soldiers on a nearby rooftop, weapons aimed down at them. There was no time to think. Danny threw himself over Lisa and Max. Riley barked furiously, drawing the enemy's attention. The soldiers aimed at Riley instead, and that's when coalition forces hit them from behind. Cole's squad had followed Danny and Riley, providing overwatch. The enemy soldiers went down before they could fire a shot. "Told you we'd cover your exit," Cole said over the comm. They got Lisa and Max to medical evacuation. The dog would recover, so would his handler. And they'd be back to work as soon as possible because that's what partners did. The battle for Haven's Rest lasted 3 days. Coalition forces held until reinforcements arrived. The enemy was pushed back and eventually surrendered. Final casualty count: coalition forces lost 200 soldiers, but they saved over 15,000 civilians. K9 units had found 80% of those survivors. Danny sat in the medical bay, exhausted beyond measure. Riley lay beside him, bandaged in several places from minor injuries. The dog had worked for 3 days straight, finding people, warning of dangers, providing comfort to terrified civilians. Amy entered with Scout. Both looked as tired as Danny felt. "Command's calling it the miracle at Haven's Rest," she said. "They're saying the K9 units changed the outcome of the entire battle." Danny scratched Riley's ears. "We just did our jobs." "No," Lieutenant Nash said, appearing in the doorway. "You did more than that. You proved something." He held up a datapad showing news from across the coalition. 15 more species have requested K9 programs. The footage of the dog saving civilians has been broadcast everywhere. "You're heroes," Riley yawned, showing all his teeth. Heroes or not, he was tired and wanted to sleep. But before Danny could respond, medical alarms started blaring. Another emergency. More people needed help. Riley was on his feet immediately, wounds and exhaustion forgotten. Danny stood too. "Where do you need us?" 6 months after Haven's rest, Danny stood in a place he'd never imagined he'd see. The Coalition Grand Assembly Hall stretched out like a cathedral of glass and steel. Representatives from 200 worlds filled the chamber. Today they were gathered to witness something historic, the formal establishment of the interspecies K9 Corps. Danny wore his dress uniform, still feeling like that nervous rookie who'd stepped off the transport with Riley. But everything had changed since then. Riley sat beside him, wearing his own ceremonial collar, calm despite the crowd of thousands. Sergeant Bryn approached the podium. He'd been promoted to commander and placed in charge of the entire K9 program. His logical Hovan mind had documented every success, every mission, every life saved. When humans first proposed introducing their domesticated canines into coalition forces, many thought it was foolish, Bryn began. Predators were to be feared and controlled, not befriended. But humanity showed us something our species had never considered. True partnership. On screens around the chamber, footage played. Riley finding survivors at the mining colony, Scout leading evacuees to safety, Max taking fire to protect his handler, Duke tracking enemies through impossible terrain, Buddy comforting frightened children in war zones. Over 6 months, K9 teams had saved more than 50,000 lives. The data is conclusive, Bryn continued. Units operating with K9 partners show marked improvement in all metrics. Success rates, survival rates, and most remarkably, psychological health. Soldiers working with dogs report lower stress, better morale, and stronger unit cohesion. Danny watched the audience. He saw Owen sitting with Buddy, both of them confident now. He saw Amy with Scout, who'd been decorated for bravery after Haven's rest. He saw dozens of other handlers, human and alien, who'd learned what it meant to work with dogs. But the impact goes beyond military operations, Bryn said. 17 worlds have requested civilian K9 programs. Therapy dogs for hospitals, service dogs for disabled citizens, rescue dogs for disaster response. What began as a military experiment has become a cultural revolution. The Hovan commander stepped back, and Lieutenant Nash took the podium. The big Drath looked uncomfortable in formal dress, but his voice carried authority. I spent 15 years believing that strength meant domination, that respect had to be earned through fear. Then I met a human rookie and his tail-wagging war beast. Nash actually smiled. That dog taught me more about leadership than any combat manual. He showed me that loyalty given freely is stronger than obedience forced through fear. Riley's tail thumped once against the floor. Even now, in this formal setting, he was just a dog. A very good dog. Nash gestured toward Danny. Private Reed, front and center. Danny stood and walked to the podium. Riley followed at perfect heel. They stood before the entire Coalition Assembly. Private First Class Daniel Reed, Nash announced formally, for exceptional service to Coalition forces, for pioneering integration of human canine partnerships, and for personally saving 147 lives across multiple combat operations, you are hereby promoted to the rank of sergeant and awarded the Coalition Star of Valor. The chamber erupted in applause. Representatives from 200 worlds, dozens of species, all celebrating a human and his dog. But Nash wasn't finished. And by unanimous vote of the Coalition Military Command, Riley is awarded honorary rank of sergeant and granted full Coalition citizenship. Danny looked down at Riley in shock. Citizenship meant recognition as a person, not property. It meant rights and protections. It meant the Coalition saw Riley not as a tool but as an individual. Riley, understanding none of the politics but sensing Danny's emotion, licked his hand. The ceremony continued with speeches and formal declarations. The K9 Corps was officially established with Bryn as director and Danny as chief training officer. Funding was allocated. Facilities were planned. Within a year, they projected 200 handler teams. Within 5 years, maybe 1,000. But the real ceremony happened later, away from cameras and politicians. Danny took Riley to the observation deck. Through the massive windows, stars stretched to infinity. Somewhere out there, Earth turned, the birthplace of both humans and dogs. And now, from this small blue world, they were spreading across the galaxy together. Owen found them there. Buddy immediately went to Riley, and the two dogs greeted each other the way dogs always did, with sniffing and tail wagging and play bows. I never thanked you properly, Owen said. For what? For showing me that fear can be overcome. My entire species lived in terror of predators for millions of years. That fear is encoded in our very genes. But Buddy helped me past it. Owen watched the two dogs playing. Now I'm teaching others from my world. We're forming our own canine unit. Prey species working with predators by choice. That's incredible, Danny said. It's revolutionary. And it started with you and Riley. After Owen left, Amy arrived with Scout, then other handlers with their dogs. Before long, the observation deck was filled with the K9 Corps, humans and aliens and dogs all gathered together. Riley lay at Danny's feet, tired from all the excitement. The other dogs gradually settled as well, forming a peaceful pile of fur and contentment. What happens now? Amy asked. We've proved the concept. We've changed military doctrine. What's next? Danny looked at his friends, his fellow handlers, all the dogs who'd chosen to work alongside different species. He thought about the future, about K9 teams spreading to every coalition world, about dogs teaching the galaxy what humanity had learned millennia ago. Now we teach, Danny said. We show them that cooperation is stronger than control, that partnership beats domination, that love and loyalty can cross species lines. That's a lot of responsibility for one program, someone said. It's not one program anymore. It's a movement. Riley lifted his head and looked at Danny. In those brown eyes, Danny saw everything that mattered: trust, loyalty, friendship. The bond between human and dog that had existed for 15,000 years, now extending to the stars. Humans didn't conquer the wolf, Danny said quietly. We befriended it. We didn't force dogs to serve us. We invited them to work beside us. That's our gift to the galaxy. Not weapons or technology, but the knowledge that the strongest bonds are the ones formed by choice. Riley's tail wagged in agreement. Somewhere in the station, new recruits were arriving with their dogs. Somewhere, trainers were teaching alien soldiers how to earn a dog's trust. Somewhere, a child who'd been saved by a K9 team was asking their parents if they could have a dog of their own. The galaxy was changing, one wagging tail at a time. Danny scratched Riley behind the ears. You ready for what comes next, boy? Riley stood and stretched, then looked up at Danny with that expression of absolute trust that dogs had perfected over thousands of years. Whatever came next, they'd face it together, just like always. Just like humans and dogs had been doing since the first wolf decided that maybe those strange hairless apes by the fire weren't so bad after all. The stars waited, and across the galaxy tails were wagging. It was time to teach the universe what humanity's best friend had taught humanity so long ago. That the strongest warriors were the ones who fought not with fear and force, but with love and loyalty. That true power came not from domination, but from partnership, and that sometimes the greatest gift you could give another species wasn't conquest or control. Sometimes the greatest gift was simply friendship. Riley barked once, happy and ready. Danny smiled. Yeah, buddy. Let's go change the galaxy. And together, a human and his dog walked toward tomorrow, leading the way for countless others who would follow. The tail-wagging war beast and his rookie human had shown the stars a new path. Now it was time to see how far that path could go.